Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Kep, co-founder of From Day One, our forum on corporate values. Welcome to today's webinar. We're excited about this topic today, how employers can respond to a worrisome lack of well-being among employees. But before we get started, I want to share something special we have for today's attendees. One of our monthly virtual conferences is coming up tomorrow, Wednesday, January 12th, and it's titled Recruiting Skilled Talent in 2022. New Ideas for a Hotly Competitive Labor Market. It's going to have all kinds of insights and actionable advice for employers who are working to attain, retain, and attract talent at a time when skilled workers are so sought after. Thanks to our partners, including today's sponsor, we have some complimentary VIP tickets available for those who've joined today's webinar. That's you. I'm putting a link in the chat space right now. You'll want to take a look at this one. The regular price for our conference tickets is $149, and this link will give you a free VIP ticket for the whole day's activities. Now, today we'll be exploring the topic, addressing the well-being crisis to avoid the turnover tsunami. As workers and employers struggle through the prolonged COVID-19 pandemic, just 1 in 5 employees say they feel a strong sense of well-being. This represents a significant risk to employers as productivity suffers while absenteeism and turnover skyrocket. You'll hear today from Natalie Baumgartner, PhD, on the latest research from Achievers Workforce Institute and learn about the risks that employers face and what you can do about it. From a concerning disconnect between HR and employees to the close relationship between well-being and retention, this webinar is designed to be highly useful to the people-oriented leader. You'll learn 3 practical steps to improve employee well-being that you can start applying in your organization today. Our sponsor is Achievers. I'll tell you something about them. The people at Achievers see every day as an opportunity to build a great culture and change the way the world works, and it starts with them. At Achievers, they're leaders when it comes to employee recognition and engagement. They give employees a voice through pulse surveys, frequent check-ins, and networks that allow them to grow, learn, and contribute to our communities. In fact, that's the culture of Achievers, and they're proud of it. Now, a few logistical items. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to you on demand soon after the event, so you can look out for an email in about 24 hours with that link. That email will also have info on how you can get professional development credits for this session from both the Society of Human Resource Management and the HR Certification Institute. And look out for a written account of the conversation on our website at fromdayone.co. At about 45 minutes into the webinar, we'll have a Q&A session. You can submit your questions anytime you think of them using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. Now I'd like to introduce our speakers. Our first speaker, Natalie Baumgartner, is the Chief Workforce Scientist at Achievers. She has spent her career advising companies of all sizes, from entrepreneurial startups to Fortune 500 companies, on issues related to company culture. Our second speaker today, Brendan Yorke, is the Employee Success Operations Partner at Achievers. He launched a Wellness Employee Resource Group at Achievers last year with a focus on employee ownership, experimentation, and community building. Okay, at this point, Natalie and Brendan, over to you.
Thanks so much, Steve. Welcome, everyone, to today's webinar focused on addressing the well-being crisis that is occurring around the globe as we speak. It's happening in lockstep with the unprecedented Great Resignation, a phenomenon that the Achievers Workforce Institute predicted inside our 2021 engagement and retention report, based on the data we saw coming out of the business arena, even as far back as early 2021. Well, today we're going to look at the intersection of these well-being and job commitment crises and help you understand how to tackle this perfect storm. I'm Dr. Natalie Baumgartner, and as Steve said, I'm the Chief Workforce Scientist at Achievers, the world's only truly science-driven employee experience technology company dedicated to creating solutions that change the way the world works. And I'm basically a big culture and engagement nerd. Over the past couple of decades, my work has been dedicated to using engagement science to improve the lives of people at work. And I'm really so grateful to have an opportunity to bring research-based insights and best practices to life here at Achievers, where we have a deep commitment to improving the employee experience through data and science at every step. And I'm so pleased to have fellow Achiever Brendan Yorke join us today. Brendan, would you share a bit about yourself?
Thanks, Natalie. I'm Brendan, and I'm the Employee Success Operations Partner here at Achievers. My role focuses on HR data. So that's what I live and breathe every day. And I've been in this role for the past year and a half. In our Employee Success or HR department, retention is a key focus, and we're looking at what variables connect with retention. I'm also the chair of the Achievers Wellness Employee Resource Group. We established the Wellness ERG in 2021 to gather feedback and drive initiatives to support the health and well-being of all Achievers employees. I'm excited to share some of the learnings with you all today.
Wonderful. I'm really looking forward to our conversation, Brendan. Now, before we dive into our discussion, let's take a quick look at our agenda just to give you a sense of how we'll spend our time together. I'm going to kick us off by providing you with some background on the well-being research that we're sharing with you today, followed by a review of our key research findings. Then we'll spend some time looking at specific ways to actively impact well-being before Brendan takes us through our well-being and practice section, focused on the actions and the impact of wellness ERGs. We'll close with some key takeaways and aim to have time to take a few of your questions. Speaking of which, as Steve mentioned, if you have questions at any point during the presentation, please drop them in the Q&A tab, and we'll answer as many as we can during that final portion of our time together. I am so excited to dive in, but before we launch into our well-being research and insights, I wanted to share a quick word about the Achievers Workforce Institute, where the research that we'll review today is conducted. In my nerdy role, I have the great privilege of overseeing the Achievers Workforce Institute, which is really the home inside Achievers for our data scientists, our workforce science researchers, our employee experience experts. It's here that we ensure that everything we deliver to the business arena, from our thought leadership to our technology, that it's all rooted in rigorous science. It's science that truly makes people's lives better. If you are interested in learning more about the work we do, we would love for you to join us on this journey by becoming a member of the Achievers Workforce Institute. Being a member of the Workforce Institute ensures that you're front and center every time our state-of-the-art engagement content rolls out of our research laboratory. And it also allows you to hear about other ways to collaborate with the Institute, including invitations to our thought leadership webinars and opportunities to participate in future research. There's no cost, no strings attached, and we've made it really easy to join. Just hold up your phone camera to the QR code on the screen and you'll be redirected straight to the membership form. Becoming a member of the Workforce Institute ensures that you are in lockstep with us on this path. It's simply another way for us to fulfill our mission at Achievers to change the way the world works. Okay, let's talk data. If you are a data geek like me and Brendan, you may be wondering where the findings and insights we're sharing with you come from. The Achievers Workforce Institute conducts a number of research studies throughout the year. And last quarter, we surveyed nearly 3,000 people, a mix of both HR leaders and general employees, to examine how they were experiencing and addressing well-being inside their organizations. Our findings were shared in the AWI's most recent research report, Empowering Employee Well-Being in the New World of Work, which is available to you using the link available on your screen or in the chat. The report and this presentation will also be accessible in the Discover link that we'll share after today's session. So with that, let's take a look at what we learned through our research and what our findings mean for your organization. Let me begin by putting a fine point on what you surely know, either firsthand or by observation. We are in the midst of an unprecedented well-being crisis. Now, this in and of itself is not new news. It's not shocking. I mean, we've been living through a global pandemic for nearly 2 years now. So no, it's not surprising, but it is alarming. It's alarming because as this pandemic drags on and fits and starts, we, the folks at the helm of our people practices, we're at risk of becoming numb, or perhaps not numb, but sort of overwhelmed to the fact that people are truly struggling. They're struggling and they need our help. To bring this reality home, our data showed that only 1 in 5 employees report feeling a strong sense of physical and mental well-being, with even fewer saying they feel supported in effectively managing their well-being. The vast majority of people in our workplaces are clearly struggling. They're not feeling well. And this lack of well-being has tremendous implications across a wide range of areas, which we'll dive into shortly. Our second key finding is that of a striking HR employee disconnect when it comes to well-being. Almost half of HR leaders reported that they believe their organization effectively supports employee well-being, while only half of employees surveyed said the same. In a nutshell, we have a situation around the globe where HR leaders believe they're checking the right boxes to ensure employee well-being, but the employees are simply not receiving what they need. Now, we believe there are two phenomena in play related to this disconnect, one tactical and one strategic. In terms of tactics, we think many organizations around the globe are experiencing a communication breakdown. The average knowledge worker receives over 120 emails a day, and the rise in digital fatigue from being constantly inundated with instant messages, Slack, and other notifications, they're coming across my screen as we speak. It's made it increasingly difficult to get the attention and the mind share of employees. But tactical limitations alone don't account for this lack of alignment. The most fundamental reason for this disconnect is that these well-being programs, tools, and services, they were implemented for the most part without sufficient employee input. We'll talk more about both of these underlying issues in just a bit. Our next key research finding was that well-being is a powerful predictor of turnover. Specifically, employees who say their employer does not support their well-being, they're more than twice as likely to regularly job hunt. As we review more of our findings and examine some of the key drivers of well-being, remember that when executed successfully, well-being drivers function as tools to reduce churn. Okay, so we've talked about keen insights on the power of well-being at work, but what, you may be asking, can you do to drive well-being inside your organization? Well, luckily, there's a lot that fits that bill. At the top of the list, though, is a resource that's readily available to every one of you, and that's the high-impact tool called recognition. Employees recognized just once a week are twice as likely to say that they feel a strong sense of well-being at work. Twice as likely. That is a powerhouse finding and confirms that recognition is truly a protective factor for well-being. Now, to round out our key findings on well-being, I want to zoom out a bit to the bigger picture, the ultimate goal of a healthy work experience for employees, the experience of belonging. Some of you may have read our 2021 culture report on belonging at work, and if so, you'll have a more in-depth understanding of the role that belonging plays in the workplace and ensuring that all employees feel welcomed, known, included, supported, and connected. In this current body of research, we furthered our understanding of belonging with the finding that well-being, in fact, correlates with every single one of the belonging pillars. That means that a focus on and an investment in supporting a deep sense of mental and physical well-being for your employees provides all of those positive benefits we've already discussed and also increases the ultimate measure of workplace success, a sense of true belonging. What's more, when you ensure that employees are welcome, known, included, supported, and connected, when you ensure they belong, they'll also reap the benefits of deep well-being. Well-being and belonging are the dynamic duo. Okay, with those key findings in mind, let's get tactical and explore what you can do to take action to improve employee well-being for your people. We're going to look at 3 types of action you can take to drive well-being, each with 3 tactics. So that's a total of 9 ways that you're going to be able to take action to drive well-being right away. Let's get started. The 3 action areas we'll discuss are support, recognition, and ask plus action. I'll set the stage with the scientific grounding supporting each area, and then Brendan and I are going to dive into more detail around specific actions you can take today to improve well-being tomorrow. Our first action area is support. Our analyses identified 3 types of support that held a strong relationship to well-being, starting with organizational support. Employees who believe their organizations do a good job supporting employee well-being are far more likely to report higher levels of both physical and mental health. I'm curious, Brendan, when you hear the phrase organizational support, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, for our employees to feel that the company is supporting their well-being, they need to see that the company is doing some things connected to well-being explicitly. Even better, employees participate in those activities and feel better as a result. Some of those actions can look like offerings, and some of those actions can look like a reduction of barriers to well-being. Looking at the research, a variety of offerings help employees feel like the company is offering relevant programming to them to support their well-being. And what we've done is break well-being into some categories to help us make sure that we're offering a variety of programming. At Achievers, we break it down into four types. So physical, mental, social, and financial. And some actions in these buckets, people in the audience will recognize as a part of the cost of doing business in many industries: health benefits, paid leave, employee social activities, appropriate salary. Even though many employers offer these things already, we still need to connect the dots for employees, encourage participation, and remove barriers to participation. For example, Achievers has offered a retirement matching program for a long period of time, but we didn't see as much uptake initially. Over the past few weeks, we've offered more education, some financial literacy 101, improved the program accessibility, and we've already seen the participation increase, leading to long-term sense of financial well-being is our goal there. If a group of employees, as another example, feel like they can't take time off in their role, then we need to discover why and reduce that barrier so that they feel that organizational support. It's not enough to have benefits and perks and activities. People need to know that they exist. They need to feel like the activities are relevant to them, understand how to access them, and have any barriers to access understood and reduced.
Absolutely. I think your experience really reinforces that finding in our own research that communication is really critical when it comes to well-being. Okay, let's take a look now at our second type of support, manager support. Here, we ask participants to respond to the statement, "My manager supports me in balancing work and personal demands," which again, strongly correlated with higher well-being outcomes. We know maintaining a healthy and sustainable mix of work and personal activity in one's life isn't easy, but it's fundamental to well-being. And having a manager that supports success in this regard, it's game-changing. Brendan, what are your thoughts and experience on empowering supportive, effective managers?
Yeah, in this area, I think of the Achievers Workforce Institute Manager Empowerment Research from late 2020. In it, you and AWI found 4 factors for manager effectiveness: contact, recognition, coaching, and professional development. And for me, looking at other research and models, I find this a really straightforward and powerful model for manager empowerment. Empowering managers means training and supporting them in each of these 4 areas to ensure that they're having a strong positive impact on their teams. One of the barriers identified in our employee well-being survey is that employees felt like they couldn't take time away from work to do well-being activities that were being offered to them, sometimes because their calendar was filling up with meetings and they didn't feel like they had control to take a break in the middle of the day to come to a yoga class or meditation or go for a group activity. And that perception that they couldn't take time away for some employees was a bit disempowering. The frustrating part of this is that it's often avoidable because managers are usually open to finding a way to achieve both outcomes, both the output of the work and helping employees feel well. Regular one-on-ones can really help. So that's the contact piece of the manager empowerment framework as just one example. An effective manager can see changes in behavior ask about well-being in one-on-ones, and coach the employee to reduce barriers that they're finding for well-being. For example, my own manager, Hannah, has invited me to open conversations about how I'm feeling without judgment. And in these conversations, she doesn't solve all of my stressors. In some ways I wish, but she does act as a sounding board to drive towards better outcomes. She's a coach in that way. Management that covers those 4 areas of manager empowerment and is personalized to each employee generates more productivity and loyalty, which of course is very relevant for us as we're looking at retention.
I couldn't agree more. It's really well said, Brendan. We're all so unique as individuals, and that means that what we need from our managers will differ as well, which brings us to our final type of support, colleague or peer support. In this case, we asked participants whether they felt they were able to receive support from colleagues when they needed it, which really speaks to the extent to which individuals feel they have a support structure around them that they can reach out to in times of need, whether it's professional or personal. Brendan, I'd love to hear your thoughts on peer support.
Yeah, encouraging peer support is a focus of the Wellness Employee Resource Group, especially as we look forward to 2022. And the reason why it's a focus is because we found some good early success in 2021. Last year, we assigned a wellness buddy for a Healthy Habits campaign. The idea was that if you had one other person who was there with you in your wellness journey, who could send you a daily encouragement, check in, it's a very helpful social accountability tool, and employees really appreciated it. It's a great motivator. And so we're going to repeat that next year. I think that peer support is also something that we excel at here at Achievers, something I noticed during my onboarding a year and a half ago. People are so supportive. As their peers, the Employee Resource Group for Wellness sends a group recognition to everyone who participates in wellness activities so that they feel, again, that the peers are supporting them. When I log into the platform, I'm always seeing recognitions about the incredible support that people have gotten from their teammates and people on other teams.
Yeah, I agree and have that same experience. I think we Achievers folks definitely take peer support to a new level. And I love that you mentioned recognition because that's the next area we're going to dive into. When we asked participants in our study how often they're recognized, we found that those recognized in the last week were twice as likely to say they have strong feelings of well-being. And what's more, organizations with a formal recognition platform, they outperformed those without one when it came to well-being outcomes. And really just all of these findings point to recognition as a clear protective factor for well-being. And having a recognition platform simply makes it much easier to create a culture of recognition within your organization. So let's look a bit more closely to understand what makes for meaningful recognition, the type that has the impact we just described. There are 3 main factors, the first of which I already mentioned, frequency. The Achievers Workforce Institute research has demonstrated over and over that organizations need to aim for a minimum of 1 recognition per employee per month to effectively move the needle on engagement. Now, that may sound high, but we found that for most organizations, once they focus on recognition frequency as an objective, monthly recognition is a realistic and manageable goal. Brendan, can you share a bit about how Achievers has addressed recognition frequency?
Sure. We definitely see the importance of frequency internally, especially during remote working. When in person, we get hundreds of verbal and nonverbal cues from each other that tell us what the other person's thinking. Virtually, we need to make up for that difference. The first thing we did is give everyone points to award in our internal recognition platform. So every week, employees get some points that they can give to another employee with email nudges if they haven't used their points. We also really encourage social recognition, which is non-monetary. There's no dollars or points associated with that. And the latest data from AWI shows that those social recognitions are actually the most requested type of recognition from employees. So we can actually increase the impact of recognition and how good that feels to be recognized and get that feedback and gratitude from peers without increasing costs. That also means that when other companies are setting up recognition programs, you can encourage social recognitions for those day-to-day good actions that support a positive workplace culture that people appreciate in each other, and then use the monetary recognition, which is the points-based or dollar-based recognition, focusing on impact or outcomes. So you get the best of both worlds there. In order to do that, we provide onboarding on what great recognitions look like and highlight some great recent recognitions in company meetings to extend the impact of those recognitions.
Being recognized is such a powerful experience, and I really appreciate that there are so many ways to make that a regular experience for our people. Okay, our next factor is recognition quality. We know that not all recognition is created equal. Sometimes when people hear us talk about recognition frequency, they picture this world of participation trophies and meaningless appreciation, but that's not at all what we're encouraging. In fact, vapid recognition helps no one and can actually be demotivating. So what does meaningful recognition look like? Brendan, why don't you walk us through it?
Sure. The Achievers, we've identified 4 criteria that contribute to a meaningful recognition. And those are specific, timely, public, and values aligned. So I'll run through each of those. First of all, specific. So I'll ask you to engage in a thought experiment with me. Think about the difference between someone saying to you, thanks for all your work, versus saying, thanks for your action-oriented facilitation of today's call. We were able to solve the problem quickly, and I know that our customers will appreciate the extra effort. Which would you rather receive? The second one is specific, which helps the other person feel seen and known, and they trust the validity of that recognition more when it's specific. Next is timely. We know that recognition loses some of its potency when it isn't immediate. So if you wait 2 weeks to say thank you to someone, they probably have forgotten what it felt like for them to do that action or the specifics of what happened there. Being timely also relates to the employee life cycle. We regularly ask for feedback from our new hires, and we ask them for their wow moments. Because the employee's first week is so critical to their long-term retention, we have heard from employees that when they receive a recognition in their first week, it's one of their most memorable wow moments, so that they can feel and understand what the culture is. And it's a vulnerable time when you're in a new group of people. So getting that validation and that recognition early on is especially meaningful. So that was timely. Third is public. So now this doesn't mean that every single person wants to be called up on stage with their virtues listed for a crowd. That sounds like an introvert's nightmare. Certainly would be my nightmare as an introvert. However, sharing the gratitude beyond just 2 individuals makes it feel more significant for the recipient. For example, when I've shared a recognition and I share it with the recipient's manager or some peers who also understand the contribution the other person made, they often pile on their gratitude to that person, and it makes it feel even better. Finally, we talk about values aligned. We as companies all have values for a reason. This is one way to make the values come to life. We want people to behave in a way that reflects the values that we have as a company. So when we recognize for values aligned behavior, one thing that we say at Achievers is that when something gets recognized, it gets repeated. So aligning the recognition to those values ensures that people are continuing to act in a values aligned way and more likely to increase those values aligned behaviors.
Yeah, absolutely. Brendan, there's no doubt that recognition is a really powerful alignment tool. Let's talk about our final factor, having a technological infrastructure in place to enable employees to easily call out the good work they see being done around them. Our research showed that when employees reported having a recognition platform, they were almost twice as likely to say that their company supported employee well-being, and more than twice as likely to say they received recognitions for participation in well-being initiatives. Brendan, I'm curious what you think might be driving that relationship.
It's an interesting one. I think at its core, a recognition platform streamlines and simplifies what recognition is and what those efforts can look like. Without a platform, ensuring everyone is recognized monthly is difficult to drive and very hard to measure. Without a platform, aligning recognitions to values is more inconsistent. Whereas with a platform, we can ensure our recognition categories align with the company core values and remind people to recognize others based on those values. A platform also makes the recognition public. And as we talked about before, that feels more meaningful to people. And gratitude for others has a ripple effect beyond the recipient is another interesting thing that I've noticed here at Achievers. I love reading recognitions between other people. It makes me feel proud in the wider team. It's heartwarming. And it reminds me to send a recognition to someone else and do my part to contribute to that culture and those positive experiences for others. Also, integrations with Teams, Zoom, Outlook allow people to recognize quickly in the flow of work so that they don't have to go outside of their normal day-to-day to recognize others.
Yeah, those are all such great points. We know, right? Having a technological platform allows for a supercharged recognition experience. Okay, let's look now at our final area of focus for well-being, what we're calling ask plus action. This is a concept that you might refer to as continuous communication or feedback cycle. Action being taken on input provided. Whatever you call it, research shows that this process is key to closing that HR employee disconnect. In fact, while 1/3 of HR leaders said their organization is great at taking action on employee feedback, less than 1/5 of employees agreed. So this is another area where HR can inadvertently miss an opportunity to involve and engage their people. Let's tease it out a bit more. The first step in the gathering of feedback is asking your employees how they feel. It's about understanding their needs and what drives them. Brendan, would you share your perspective on the gathering of feedback?
Sure. I can talk about this from two perspectives. One is as part of Achievers Employee Success or HR team, and one as the chair of the Wellness ERG. So first, Achievers does 3 pulse surveys or engagement surveys a year. We ask about 15 to 20 questions and track the trends over time. We have open-ended questions to get advice from employees and other questions that are aimed at supporting managers or guiding senior leadership. So we're gathering feedback on key employee experience questions pretty regularly, seeing the trends over time and how our actions are showing up in the results. As an ERG, employees are volunteering their time to support other employees' well-being. It's often on the side of our desks. So we really want to get the best return on investment for our time and the actions that we're taking as an ERG. That means understanding employees' priorities and how they've responded to our events. We gather input on activities that we're considering and fast feedback after each activity to see what the immediate outputs felt like for employees. We also have a survey every 6 months or so to ask about the longer term impacts. How are employees feeling about Achievers' support of their well-being? So we can see whether all of these activities and immediate outputs are having the impact that we are hoping for. This helps to close the HR employee disconnect because employees are seeing that their input and feedback is reflected on the resource that the company is providing to them.
Gosh, there's so much power in real-time data. So once that input is gathered, it's on to step 2, taking action. And action is key. In fact, AWI research shows that there's no such thing as survey fatigue, only inaction fatigue. Employees will continue giving you feedback and insights for as long as they feel heard and valued, which means seeing action taken on their input. Brendan, can you give us a couple of examples of how Achievers or the Wellness ERG have taken action on feedback?
Absolutely. From an HR perspective, we've used feedback for specific programs like revamping our parental leave policies and program and creating leadership training on effective development-focused one-on-ones. Some feedback is handled at the company level, wider programs, but a lot of the feedback is most quickly handled within a smaller team. We've heard from the Institute that inaction fatigue, as Natalie mentioned, is the greatest risk for falling response rates. So we have a lot of steps in place to ensure people feel heard. That's important because if we want everyone to feel like they can share their feedback and that will be heard and understood. For example, after every survey, the results that we have from our engagement survey are broken down to a team level, and managers lead what we call a listening session with their teams to discuss specific highlights and hotspots that are seen in the survey. Employees have given really good feedback on this process. It brings the written and quantitative feedback to life. And once they have that listening session with their direct team, there's two things that happen. That feedback rolls up to other managers so that more company actions can be taken. And managers follow up every 2 to 4 weeks to check in on progress with their teams against some of the actions that were discussed as a result of the survey, so that people feel the impact of their feedback. From a wellness ERG perspective, we've heard that people liked our wellness activities from the past, but they've often felt like the scheduled times didn't suit their schedule or their calendar. So one of the ways we're taking action on this, to get specific, is we are building out activities that are not time specific or time bound. We, as an example to this, ran a wellness challenge with wellness buddies so that they could encourage each other. People liked having a wellness buddy, but they asked for a wellness buddy with similar goals. So if you had someone's goal being to meditate daily, that person who wants to meditate, it's probably better that they are matched with someone who's also wants to work on their mindfulness versus someone who's maybe training to run a marathon, because it's pretty different, and some of the things that they learn might be different. What's really a key part of taking action is to communicate what the action is, even if it turns out that we can't do something to solve a problem immediately, such as the stress caused by the pandemic. Acknowledging each other's current experience with empathy, that's an action in itself.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I often talk about how important it is to remember that we don't have to solve every problem for our employees, but we do need to ensure that they know their challenges have been heard and that we'll get to the solution together. All right, let's move on to the third and final step now, the process of implementing a continuous cycle of ask plus action. The real goal here is to regularly have feedback coming in, to take action on that feedback, and to communicate to close the loop. Brendan, what does that continuous feedback loop look like in your/our world?
For us, it feels like getting into a rhythm of that cycle. So we have 3 pulses every year. After each session, we have company-wide communication about what we've heard overall and what we're planning to do next. There's also those team level listening sessions that we talked about earlier to determine, we call them micro actions because we want them to be small and actionable, that will help improve the situation for those individuals. So that's our first round of ask, action, communication, feedback. Then a couple of months later, we have another pulse survey where people give feedback again, triggering another cycle. It's expected that sometimes that same feedback might appear again in multiple engagement surveys. Just means that perhaps different micro actions should be used. And so our managers have that rhythm of asking for feedback, taking action, working with their teams to follow up on that feedback, and then seeing how did we do, kind of keeping it light and keeping an experimental approach so that the team can move together and move forward together.
I love hearing you name all those pieces because it's such a thoughtful and I think really comprehensive approach to asking and acting. And I can attest to the fact that having so many opportunities to weigh in as an employee makes for a strong sense of trust across the organization and just for a positive, healthy work environment. Thank you so much, Brendan, for walking through that data and best practice action with me. Now I'd like to switch gears and ask you to take us a bit deeper into the well-being world by talking with us about the Achievers Wellness ERG, both where you are today and where you're headed.
Absolutely. I'm excited to talk about some of our well-being projects. Hopefully some of these ideas will resonate with other companies' contexts. When we launched in February, our first priority was to get some input to increase participation. We've run surveys, including asking about barriers to participation in current and previous well-being activities. We're always looking for suggestions for new activities and clarity on how people want to participate. Then we take action on that feedback and communicate back our actions to employees at company meetings. Feedback sets the foundation for participation because you're more likely to go to a program if you feel like your input was incorporated into the design of that.
Gosh, I love it. So you're really walking the walk when it comes to feedback.
Thanks. It's a really great group, and we've gotten some great feedback so far. So next up, there's recognition for participation. This is a big one because the AWI research found that employees recognized for participation in well-being activities are 3 times as likely to say that they feel supported in managing their physical and mental health. So it's a very powerful tool, and it drives our outcomes and what we're trying to see. It shows us that we need to be investing in that recognition of well-being. So what does that look like? First, we offer points for completion of wellness actions. So if you take part in a program that is intended to support your own well-being and finish it, you get some points. We also will be offering mid-point recognitions for longer programs, such as a 3-week healthy habits campaign that we run. This is a social recognition, so it's non-monetary, but the goal is to encourage participants to stick with it rather than losing momentum partway through. Finally, we offer social recognition to the whole group that took part, which helps boost a sense of connection and togetherness for everyone who participated. Although you may have done a solo challenge, you weren't alone in your efforts. There were other people doing that at the same time. And next year, we're going to have those recognitions come from a member of the senior leadership team, so it feels even more meaningful.
Gosh, it's great. I know how important recognition is for keeping people motivated. So I just love seeing us really making the most of this platform that we have.
Yeah, it's true. Finally, one of our top goals is to drive belonging within our well-being program. As you mentioned earlier, Natalie, the pillars of belonging are welcomed, known, included, supported, and connected. As most of our team is temporarily working remotely right now, we've focused on building connection through peer support. Our theory is that if people feel connected and supported in their personal wellness journeys, they will understand and see that this is a special place to work. When employees see an increasingly competitive talent market, that personalization and community among their peers can be real differentiators for us. Group well-being activities increase that feeling of connection between peers and increases the depth of the relationships by helping to drive a non-work related connection, which again is harder to form in the virtual working world. One way to do this is through wellness buddies that we mentioned earlier. So again, we paired employees during a healthy habit campaign. They checked in with each other, they motivated each other, and we get really positive feedback on that aspect of the program.
Thanks, Brendan. I wonder if you could walk us through one of the campaigns that you ran last year.
Sure. So this program we call the Wellness Scavenger Hunt. We came up with about a dozen activities from journaling to getting better sleep and offered the checklist to indicate how they took part. There were different levels of participation. So if you took part in 10 challenges, you would receive 500 points. And if you did 20 challenges, you get 1,000 points. That's equivalent to $5 or $10. So we're not talking huge amounts of money here. Overall, about 15% of employees took part, and they participated in 1,100 activities or so. This was our first major campaign, so we were really excited to see that level of participation.
It was such a fun campaign to take part in. When I saw that map come up, I remember it. I loved the interactive PDF that you created so people could upload their challenge totals. Now, speaking of totals, you've already touched a little bit on metrics, but tell us more about how you measured success.
I'd say there's two main ways we measure success in 2021. The first is surveys, and the second is participation. So for the survey, you can see on the right here, the results from the surveys asking whether employees agree that Achiever supports their well-being. The purple is positive. So we got about a 85% positive reaction. In 2022, we're aiming for 90%. And when it comes to participation, we look at how many people showed interest, how many people completed the activities. We partner with Headspace. So what does our Headspace utilization look like? As well as whether people said they would continue with some of these healthy actions after the challenge was over. We also check for regional representation so that we know whether we hit the mark on our global communication. One thing we noticed is that when an activity is time prescriptive, happening at lunchtime, for example, we get about 3% participation. But when people could choose the activity, like that challenge that we just looked at, the number of participants increased by about 5 times. So our lesson for 2022 is let's be as flexible as possible with our well-being activities.
I love this data orientation and to see just how much you're learning and evolving in real time. So that makes me curious what other goals you have for 2022.
Yeah, we're excited about our second year, always trying to improve. One of the main things we're doing is changing our approach using the hum, sing, shout methodology. This was developed by C3 Media, so shout out to them. Essentially, we're looking at what activities become ongoing, what are periodic, and what are the large initiatives that we implement only once or twice a year. It's a great structure for well-being because you really want some activities to be constant, whereas other activities should help kickstart a new habit or encourage a healthy behavior. This helps us put different amounts of energy and time into certain activities, being really clear about our inputs so we can maximize our outcomes. Some of the other specific things we're looking at for 2022 are tracking participation in wellness activities against retention using our HRIS. We're creating a library of activities, perks, benefits on our Aspire platform, which is our recognition platform, with the goal of meeting people where they are spending a lot of their time, rather than creating a new home for that information. We're drafting plans for a new well-being co-pay program. This is just in the idea phase for now. But the idea is that if an employee wants to do a particular activity, like join a soccer league or go rock climbing once a week, they find 5 other people, then they apply to the Wellness ERG. We co-pay some of the costs for that activity. When employees are investing some of their own funds, their thought is that they're more likely to follow through with their time. It's very much still in the idea phase again, but it's a kind of program where it meets a lot of our objectives, offers flexibility, it improves connection because employees are participating in this with a group of others. Overall, our goals for 2022 is to have 90% employees say that Achiever supports their well-being. So we're excited to strive towards that outcome. We believe that this will improve our retention as people feel a stronger sense of well-being, which will drive their job commitment, feeling more connected and supported, and increase their sense of belonging at Achievers.
It's a really inspiring goal. And it's one I think you're really well on your way to achieving. So thank you for all of that information and those insights, Brendan. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us today and for using Achievers and the Wellness ERG as a powerful example of how to support employee well-being every single day. Now, since we just shared a whole lot of information with all of you, I want to consolidate it into a small set of key takeaways. Then I think we'll have time for a few questions. So if you have them, please do drop them in the Q&A box now, and we'll be able to review them, some of them live at the end. Okay, takeaway number 1. Invest in well-being initiatives and recognize employee participation. We talked extensively about approaches to invest in well-being for all of your employees. You can run recognition campaigns like Brenda described, or subsidized gym memberships, just to name 2 ideas among so many. And remember, it's also critical to communicate about your benefits and listen to ideas from your employee body. Dedicating budget and resources to invest in this area ensures that you can recognize people for participating in these initiatives. And as Brendan mentioned, those who say they're recognized for participating in well-being initiatives, they are 3 times as likely to feel supported in managing their own physical and mental health. Next, We must close the HR employee disconnect with continuous feedback. We talked at length about what this looks like. Ask for employee input, take action on that input, and then close the loop by communicating back about the action you've taken. A continuous cycle of feedback and action. And when you have this type of cycle in place, you close that dangerous disconnect in two ways. First, when you use employee input to guide action, then you know your efforts are going to have the intended impact. And then second, you're communicating clearly on action taken so employees know about the initiatives that are in play. The third key takeaway is to formalize your recognition program with a software solution. The power of recognition, it's crystal clear. It drives engagement, job commitment, productivity, values, aligned behaviors. And now we know it also plays a powerful role in well-being. The best way to systematize recognition and create a culture of appreciation is to invest in a software solution that streamlines the process for every employee and leader. When recognition simply becomes part of the daily routine, when employees are being recognized meaningfully monthly or more often, that's when you've built a culture of recognition that will drive positive business outcomes across the board, including employee well-being. For those of you who aren't as familiar with Achievers, we do have a recognition solution that checks the boxes that we've just mentioned, with AWI research informing the offering and the interface at every step. So if you'd like to speak to one of our colleagues to learn more, our team is offering free, no pressure consultations to discuss some of our best practices and offer recommendations based on the unique challenges and opportunities you're encountering inside your organization. So we'll circulate that link in a follow-up email to make sure you can all access it. And finally, I want to emphasize the importance of keeping belonging top of mind when you're addressing well-being. Well-being is intimately connected to belonging, each supporting the other. And when your employees experience a strong sense of well-being, when they feel mentally and physically healthy and supported, they're more likely to feel a strong sense of belonging. On the other hand, if any of the 5 pillars of belonging are missing, that's welcomed, known, included, supported, or connected, then well-being is naturally going to suffer. So if you invest in well-being, make sure it aligns with those belonging pillars and is truly a holistic approach to well-being. Before we move into questions, just a reminder, if you want to stay connected to this conversation about well-being, recognition, and belonging, and to be part of the research and discussions on the employee experience that we continuously offer, please do become a member of the Workforce Institute. Remember, there's no obligation, no commitment, no strings. It's just a great way to stay up to date on our latest research and findings regarding the enhancement of the employee experience. And it also allows you to hear about other ways to collaborate with the Institute, including invitations to our thought leadership webinars and opportunities to participate in more research. Just another way for us to fulfill that mission. So it does look like we have time for maybe 1 or 2 questions. Just going to take a look. This first question we have is, we know a lot of our staff are very stressed right now. What can we do to help them be less stressed? The stress conundrum. Well, we looked at stress quite deeply in this well-being study, and fascinatingly, nothing really correlates with reduction of stress. There is no magic bullet. We really need to address what we have control over, knowing that there are aspects of stress we just can't control. We can't stop the pandemic all by ourselves. We can't prevent someone's kid from getting a cold. We can't, keep unwanted relatives from visiting for long periods of time. So stress is a reality in our lives. It's certainly heightened right now around the globe, and it's quite intractable. But we do know that well-being and resilience, they're key. So making sure you're getting support that you need, that your employees are getting the support they need, making sure that you're leveraging recognition, and that you're consistently circling back to gain feedback and iterate, all help. Okay, we have another question here. How do you ensure that you get the highest response rates for this feedback from employees? So I'll say a little bit about it, but would love for Brendan to chime in here as well. We do we do a lot of work inside our organization about educating our employees around the importance of providing feedback to have an impact on what they want to see happen. And I know this person, in this question, who wrote this question, said they have a wellness committee. They request feedback on wellness events every month, but they get a small response rate. Brendan, do you have any thoughts on that one as well?
Yeah. If it's helpful for a benchmark for us, we have about 30 to 50%, usually around 30% of people respond to the bigger well-being surveys. And in order to increase our survey response rate, we've tried a few things that have been helpful. So at the end of a well-being activity, we ask in the session to complete the survey. So people are already there. We save some time at the end for them to give feedback on that activity. That quick in the moment feedback is more likely to get response rates. We circle back and we come back to the group with, here's what the feedback was that you gave, and here's the action that we've taken based on that feedback. And once we've done that, we've actually seen our response rate go up a bit because people see that their responses are going to lead to action. Hope that helps.
Yeah, it's great. It's back a little bit to that, the employees, our research on employees are willing, all of us, we're all employees, and we're willing to provide input so long as we know that something will come of it. Another question we have in the queue is, in the past, employees didn't always take advantage of company wellness programs. Do you think that's changing based both on work conditions and new programs? I think that's true. And I think a number of things have changed to move that in a more positive direction. One is that we have there's much more variety and different, increasingly creative schools of thought around how to promote wellness inside organizations. So as opposed to, there being sort of a one-stop shop where you can, either get a gym pass or take an educational course on well-being. There are a huge variety of offerings now. There's technology out there that supports organizations in promoting well-being to their employees. And we certainly have seen just in the research arena over the course of the pandemic, a big uptick, a tremendous uptick in the utilization of resources and programming. Now, some of that is because there's greater need right now. But I also think that it's been an opportunity for organizations to be more proactive in terms of talking about their programming. And very often we've experienced this inside our own organization. People simply just aren't aware. And we think they're aware, they must be aware, we've told them. And so that over communication is really critical. I think we're just about out of time. And I want to give Steve a chance to bring us to a close. So thank you so much for spending your time with us today, exploring the incredibly important topic of well-being at work. And thank you, Brendan, for sharing the powerful work you've done to create a phenomenal well-being strategy and wellness ERG that together drive a sense of belonging across achievers. On screen, you'll see a link to the well-being report, as well as where you can connect with us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's been a real pleasure speaking with you today. I always learn something talking with Natalie. So thanks very much for everyone's time.
Yeah, until next time, go out there and get your workforce nerd on. Over to you, Steve.
Thank you, Natalie and Brendan. That was a really persuasive presentation, and it really affirmed my personal yoga practice, which I took up at the beginning of the pandemic after being yoga resistant for many years. It was a perfect day to talk about well-being, it seems like, at this point in the pandemic calendar. So thank you again to our sponsor Achievers and to all of you for participating today. If you'd like to join us for more virtual events, you can head to our website fromday1.co and check out more of our upcoming webinars. I'll mention just 3 here. Thursday, January 20th, Conscious Coaching, getting in touch with the emotional factors. On Tuesday, January 25th, we'll be talking about closing the access gap to build a more diverse tech workforce. And on Thursday, January 27th, we'll be talking about making sustainability part of your corporate culture. So thanks, everyone. Stay well. Bye from Day One.